Hello and welcome to 7-1 Notes, where we're going to talk about converting fractions to percents and percents to fractions. A percent is nothing more than a ratio that compares a number to 100. Now, we've talked about ratios already. Ratio is the root word in the word rational number, and a rational number is a fraction or a decimal. And that's what we're going to be talking about, is converting percents to fractions and decimals to fractions to percent. And 80%, according to the definition here, about a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. 80% compares 80 to 100. So write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. 40% is 40 compared to 100, and that fraction, that ratio, will simplify. Divide by 10 and then divide by 2, so 40% is really 2/5. Now 56 1/4 is a little more tricky because we have a mixed fraction, and to put 56 1/4 over 100, that just doesn't even look right to have a fraction within a fraction. So you may think, well, let's convert it to decimal, 56.25 over 100, but that still is not correct because you have a decimal within a fraction. Now, we can make that decimal go away. We can say abracadabra, but you have to be very careful because you can't just change the problem. I have said over and over in class that you can multiply anything times 1 and not change the value of the problem. So we have to be very specific which one we choose to multiply by, and I'm going to multiply times 100 over 100. That's equivalent to 1, so I've not changed my problem, but that 100 is going to make my decimal move 2 places to the right, making it 5,625. And there's also a decimal here that when multiplied times 100 will move 2 decimal places to the right, making that 10,000. So that's a big fraction that I need to simplify. Now, with your calculator, you're able to say 5,625 divided by 10,000, and then you can convert the decimal back into a fraction in simplest form, and your calculator is going to give you 9 over 16. If you did not have a calculator, you'd start maybe with 5, maybe with 25, and you'd keep simplifying and simplifying until you get it all the way down. And the common factor here is 625, goes into both of those. But you're going to have your calculator, so hopefully you'll remember to bring that with you to class. Note that a percent can be less than 1%, and it can be greater than 100%. So what does this mean? How does this look? Let's look at example 2. Write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. 0.3 means it's less than 1%. So we're going to compare 0.3 to 100. And again, that's a decimal within a fraction, and that's just wrong. So let's multiply times 10 over 10. Remember, that's equal to 1. And that is going to make it 3 over 1,000. And that does not simplify any further, so that's how we would write 0.3% as a fraction. Now 104 means we're over 100%. So we're going to compare 104 to 100. That's okay, we're just going to have an improper fraction, and those are fractions too. And we start simplifying that, or use our calculator, and we'll end up with 26 over 25 once we simplify that down. And it still is an improper fraction, but that's okay. That's how you would write 104% as a fraction. Now, to write a fraction as a percent, we need to write it as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. And then you can transfer it to percent. So 20 over 100, it already has a denominator of 100. So that's the same thing as saying 20%. 19 over 20, we need this to have a denominator of 100. So what can we multiply by to get a denominator of 100? And that would be times 5. And we have to do the same thing to the top because, again, we don't want to change the value of the problem. So we're multiplying times 5 over 5. So that gives us 95 over 100, or 95%. And then what are we going to choose to multiply times 5 to get 100? We're going to multiply times 20 over 20. And that'll give us 160 over 100. So that means that was 160%. Okay, sometimes the denominator is not a factor of 100. It's not as easy as multiplying times 5 or multiplying times 20. So when that's your situation, you can set up a proportion. We were finishing up last semester with proportions. A proportion are two ratios that are equal to each other. So let me show you what we're talking about here. During the soccer season, the Mustangs won 12 of their 16 games. So they won 12 out of 16 games. That's a ratio. And we want to convert this to a percent. So we want to know what number over 100, 12 over 16 is equal to. That's our proportion. 12 out of 16 equals what number out of 100? So now we're ready to cross multiply, and we get 16x equals 1200. Divide both sides by 16, and x equals 75. So that means 75% is how many games they won. All right, Dion has a similar situation. He found out that 8 out of 14 8th graders participate in a club, and we want to know what percent out of 100 that is. And again, we would cross multiply. 14x equals 800. Divide by 14. And that does not go evenly. We could start with 2. 2 goes 7, and 2 goes 400. But there again, it's still a fraction, and we need it to be a number that we could say a percent. So go ahead and use your calculator. Okay, let me go back and say that I didn't finish reading this problem very well. And when I got to 400 over 7, I realized this isn't going to simplify any further to give me a whole number. We should go back and notice that it says round to the nearest hundredth. So this is approximately 57, and then to the nearest hundredth, that would be 0.14. So what percent of the students were participants of club? It was approximately 57.14%. That's how many participated in a club. 57.14%. All right, thank you, and good luck with your percents and fractions. Have a great day.